the pack. In the old golden black. In the old golden black.
Hi guys, a quick preview of the upcoming Wolves game against Chelsea on Sunday at the Molineux. I'm just going to go over quickly the press conference with Gary O'Neill where he discussed the squad. At the moment, we haven't got any injuries, which is great news, and we've been told that Cunha is going to be available and available for more minutes than he played against Arsenal. For me, we really missed him, so it's great news to see that he could be potentially starting against Chelsea. He also said that Boubacar Traoré has had a great week in training and could be available in the matchday squad. Again, great news because he's a good rotational player. He's a good player to have on the bench as backup. Let's just go back and talk about the Arsenal game. For me, I was quite shocked. I thought we played really well. I know we lost the game, but I do feel like there was moments in the game where we did really well with possession. We had really good attacking build-up. And some of the new players really shocked me of how good they played. I'm going to firstly talk about the positives and the negatives. I thought Doherty had a really good game. When I was looking back at the previous season, I didn't think he had the greatest of seasons, but he does look like he's really tried hard in pre-season to get fitter, maybe with a personal trainer or a different diet plan, but he definitely looks a little bit leaner, more agile, quicker, and I thought he had a really good game. So fair play to him because he's in at the moment because Semedo has got a ban and he will be banned for the next 2 games, so we needed him to step up and he's done that, so fair play to Matt Doherty. I also thought that Mosquera had a really good game. I thought he was great as a right-sided centre-back. I did like the Shitausri, but I do feel like he's got to be a little bit more careful because we don't want him getting a red card. We haven't got very many fast centre-backs available, and he's definitely one of our quickest ones and probably one of our best ones, so we can't afford to lose him. So hopefully Gary O'Neill and the staff have spoken to him a little bit about it, because even though it's funny, grabbing a player by the neck definitely isn't the way to go moving forward. But yeah, great player, looked good with the ball, great movement. I think he's going to be a really good player for the future for Wolves. I'm going to go into negatives. I didn't think Jose Sa had the best game. I don't think his distribution was that great, and also I thought maybe he could have done more for both goals. So I can understand why they're looking at a different goalkeeper that's more of a sweeper, better distribution. So definitely disappointing for me. And then let's move on to Totti Gomez. I thought he was another player that didn't have a great game. I do feel like it's a little bit harsh because it is still quite a new centre-back partnership, and it was against potentially one of the best teams in the world. But he wasn't that great. He did lose concentration for one of the goals. Some of his movement was quite erratic. But I do feel like against Chelsea, we need to give him another chance, because I don't think there's much point in bringing in Santi or Dawson that are much slower centre-backs. I don't think it's how Gary wants to play. He's put Totti in because he is quite quick, and I think it will be a good transition when we do get a new centre-back that is quick for him just to slot in and take Totti's position. So let's go again. Hopefully he has a better game against Chelsea. Nori, I thought, had a great game as left-back. Still grabs the ball, still moves well with it, still great at dribbling. I can't see any changes there. I know some fans have said that they should move him higher up the pitch, maybe play him as a winger, because obviously now Neto's gone, we haven't got that many ball carriers, but I think he did a good job in left back. I think he can still carry the ball in that left back position, and I just think that's how Gary wants to play. So I think with Gary, we've got to trust the manager, and that's what the manager wants. I think in midfield, Joe Gomez and Lamina, both unbelievable Rolls-Royce players, great duo. I don't think I'd change that. Maybe 70-80 minutes if you want to change it up, maybe if the players are looking tired. We've also got the opportunity to bring in Doyle on, or Boubacar Traoré if he's in the squad, so we've definitely got some good depth there, and I wouldn't change them too for the starting lineup. We're going to talk about the 3 now that are above the midfield. We've got Rodrigo Gomez, we had Bellegarde, and we had Hwang. For me, the only one I'd drop is probably Bellegarde. I'd bring Cunha into that position. I didn't think Rodrigo Gomez had too much of a bad game. It is his debut. He's probably a little bit nervous. Again, Arsenal are a great team, so I think we'll definitely give him a go. He does like taking a player on, and I think that we need that in this squad. He's dead quick. He's dead quick. He's dead tricky. He's a great player to have on the pitch, so I'd definitely start him again. Same with Hwang. Hwang didn't really have the best game. We didn't really see too much of him, but he's the kind of player that you want in the box if the ball fell to anyone, because he is clinical. He's probably the most clinical person we've got, and I do feel like we've just got to give these players a chance to bed back in again. It's been a long pre-season and they're just getting back into the Premier League, so some players just need a few games to really switch on and to get back into the swing of things. and then we're going to move on to Larson. I thought Larson did all right, to be honest. I think his header was great. I think his movement was great. Most goalkeepers would have let that goal in. It was a great save. It's a fair play to him. But I do feel like if we have any problems or he doesn't want to be in the spotlight too much, maybe after 60, 70 minutes, we can change it up and bring Guedes on. I think he's another player that can play in that position. But for me, he deserves to start against Chelsea. He looks a good player. He's tall, he's strong, he's aggressive. He gets in great positions. He's just starting to hold the ball up well now. And I think with Gary, he's going to get better and better. So that's the lineup I'd pick for the Chelsea game. For me, prediction, I still think Chelsea are in a little bit of a mess outside of the pitch. I do feel like there's some problems with Sterling. The manager's getting a little bit of stick about all the players that have been signed and the transfer budget. I do feel like they're not quite fully gelled yet for the quality of the players that they've actually bought. I think it's a really good opportunity and we usually do well against them. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Wolves and I'm going to say Cunha to score and Hwang. So follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, follow it or X, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Spotify, like us, subscribe to us, follow us. I'm now going to leave you with Dan, who's going to be talking to Nick from London is Blue podcast. Over to Dan.
All right, guys, what's going on? Joined by Nick from the London is Blue podcast. How you doing, Nick? You good?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Awesome. So, before we get into the actual Wolves game, Nick, I thought we'd talk about Chelsea in general. So what do you think about them this season? You got high hopes. What do you think of their spending? Because they're like buying pretty much every player on the planet. And then obviously you got a new manager. What do you think of your new manager as well?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, right? We're kind of all over the place right now. And so, as we're talking on August 22nd, there are roughly 7-ish days left in the transfer window, and God only knows what's going to happen between now and then. We have a lot of loaning and selling to do before the end of the window, and I'm sure there will be a couple more buys as well. As we've kind of put out on our podcast, we don't really know what to make of it yet. The progress that we started to make at the end of last season under Pochettino obviously is over because Pochettino is no longer with the club. It's a new manager with a whole new different philosophy than what Pochettino was running. In preseason, it was really a tough watch, to be honest. There were a lot of mistakes. It looked like the players were thinking instead of playing, right? And so that obviously leads to a whole lot of problems. I predicted 7th place at the beginning of the season. I think that's a pretty fair prediction as it stands now. Of course, if Chelsea add, a big time striker or something like that, then obviously that prediction is probably out the window. But I think we're in a huge amount of a chaotic mess right now, and it's going to require something incredibly special to settle it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think, though, like, looking at your manager, what I like about him as well, which I was thinking about this earlier, is the fact that he's not scared to tell players that, it's not right for them to be getting game time and sort of shaking up the team a little bit, because I feel like some of your managers of old have been guilty of just going with whatever's been, the higher earners or the people that have been in the club longer or whatever. They just seem to just stick around, and it just seems to fester a little bit like you see at United, to be fair. So I like that, the fact that you're shaking up your team a little bit. I think that is definitely what's needed. But I just can't believe how many players you've bought in again. Obviously, it's just going to be a massive balancing act now, isn't it? Just to get rid of some deadwood and some other players and everything. But I think you could be in a lot of a worse situation, to be honest. I just don't know how he's going to pick his 11. That would be my problem as a manager. I'd be like, who do I even pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting scenario, right? Because you mentioned the amount of players that we've bought. We've also sold a hell of a lot of players over the last decade. I think they published that chart today that if you just took Chelsea's academy since sales since 2014-15, just the last 10 seasons, Chelsea's academy would have sold the 7th highest amount of money in the league. Like,
Yeah.
that's a pretty, it's a weird thing to say. Like, on one side, I hope that our academy players make it at Chelsea because they're the connection to the club that we all desire. Like, I was really sad to see Conor Gallagher go. I was really sad to see Mason Mount go, so on and so forth. But at the same time, like, if you are going to run this high risk, high reward strategy, you do need to balance the books. And that is their biggest challenge now because while, I've heard the same things that you have about Maresca's man management, he's also now thrown a few players under the bus pretty directly in terms of their sell quality, right? So telling Raheem Sterling that he's not a part of the club and best of luck, and we haven't sold him yet. That
Taking his
doesn't
number
help
as well.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't help
It
your.
is mad. It is mad.
It's
But
so it's weird,
All right, cool. So ahead of the Wolves game, don't know if you've been like keeping an eye out on Wolves or whatever, but what Wolves players in our current lineup are you a little bit wary of, and how do you think Chelsea could choose to combat these issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna play out a little bit different than it did last season. Obviously, you guys did the double over us and in pretty convincing fashion, to be honest. Like, I don't think we were really in either one of those games. The first game at Molineux, we got a late goal back, but it wasn't, the game was pretty much done by that point. Got absolutely routed at home. And honestly, the game that you guys beat us at home, that was the start of Chelsea going on a pretty long unbeaten run. And I was pretty proud of that, outside of losing to Liverpool in the final, which was shambles, and City in the semifinal of the FA Cup. Like, that, I think we were doing pretty well there for a while. So I'm interested to see your perspective on who can hurt us. I know there's been quite a few ins and outs this season. But I think what's been interesting to watch specifically about Gary O'Neill is it is hard to pinpoint a style with him. I think that he does a really great job in every match that I've seen him coach, even back at Bournemouth and whatever, of just adapting the game plan to maximize the strengths of his squad. And as a fan of a team who has 150 players right now, as everyone would joke, like, finding the points of maximization is huge. Like, that's a really big deal. And I think it's honestly job number one of any manager worth their salt, is to figure out who can do what and how do we make those puzzle pieces fit together.
So it'll be interesting. I think, like I say, I think it'll be a very tight game, and it'll be interesting to see whether Neto is going to start or not, or whether it'll be like a bench option for you guys.
So we just got the squad for and we're recording this right before the Servette match and the UEFA Conference League, right? So we are Neto is starting that game, so I would bet that he is not going to start against you guys at the weekend. I think Chelsea are probably going to have to run two different 11s for the most part throughout the season when it comes to those games, just to keep freshness, because I think we could play somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 matches if we reach the final of everything this year, including the Club World Cup. So I think there's going to have to be essentially like two different squads that run in two different teams and get to know each other. I think that's the biggest weakness early in the season, to be honest with us, is that, who is going to be a part of squad A, who's going to be a part of squad B, how do they get on with each other, how do they develop relationships with each other, all those different things. So I think you're probably catching us at the right time, if I'm honest. I think we're at a point where, defensively, we're in a weird spot. I don't think we played terribly against City, if I'm honest. Like, obviously we faced last weekend, both of our teams faced the top two teams in the league, right? So
it's hard to see what's cooking, really, isn't it?
I'll be intrigued to see how this game goes. Obviously, City, very ball dominant team. You guys less so. What is the balance in attack? Is Chelsea going to be more ball dominant? I think we basically split 50-50 with City, which is not easy to do.
I think what's going to be interesting as well, Nick, is that you said that it will be a different game to last time because obviously personnel, manager, and all those things. But I think you'll see a different Wolves as well. We tended to play a back five against you guys both times, using our wing backs to sort of get some width and hurt you out wide. We actually play a back four now, and Lamina sort of slots in as our DM to make it a five should they need help or whatever. But in an attacking sense, we've got a free man now, so we actually play a 10, which has given us a lot more attacking sort of threat, especially if Cunha plays that role. And we've also got a key number 9 now in Jürgen Strand-Larsen. So it's going to be a very different match for you guys, if I'm honest. We don't tend to play out wide as much anymore, which is basically all we did last time. Very, very rare when we sort of played through the middle in the attacking third. So it's going to be interesting. Two very different sides to how when we last met. So it's hard to judge, isn't it? It depends how we choose to play. We can also use Rodrigo Gomez, who's one of our new signings, who was absolutely awesome in the preseason. Really, really reminiscent of Neto, but he's still got different qualities. Really, really interesting player. Plays out on the left, even though he played out right for for the club we bought him from. So yeah, like I said, it's going to be a really, really different matchup, and it's going to be really interesting to see how we both fare against one another, because we are very different to when we last played.
Yeah, I would say for us, like, just given the lineup that I just talked about, us playing against Servette here pretty quickly. Cole Palmer on the bench, Nico Jackson on the bench, most of the back line on the bench. So it's basically, I think you're going to see the better part of a full rotation. You'll see Enzo Fernandez, you'll see Caicedo and Lavia. I would bet you'd see all three of those together. Left wing is going to be interesting, right? Because I don't think Neto will start 2 in a row. So is that maybe some chance for Nkunku to go back out wide and Jackson through the middle, Palmer on the right? I'm not 100% sure yet how it's going to look, but there's definitely threat in and around there, depending on how we play. But my guess is you're getting more of this closer to the squad that played against City than you are this afternoon.
Cool. Yeah, I think it'd be. I think. What are your thoughts actually? As we're talking about Neto, what are your thoughts on that signing, and from what you've seen so far, or what you've seen in a Wolves shirt? Is it a player that excites you? Is it a player that you're glad that you've sort of got the signing now?
Yeah, I mean, he's a great player. I've watched him for a while. I mean, he's been in the league for 5 years, so that we've seen plenty of him. Watched him with Portugal. I think he has the technical ability to exist and live pretty decently in the Maresca system, which is a highly technical mechanism to work within. Like, it is not kind of run and gun play where you're just hitting people on the counter all the time. So I think that may save his legs a little bit too, which is, I think part of the worry about a player like that who's been injured so frequently over the last 5 years is that perhaps this more controlled possession style where you're not making so many bursts all the time is the right sort of system to maximize him. But, it'll be interesting to see. It is a step up in terms of, having to play European competition now and, typically going pretty deep in the cups and all the sorts of things that, we do at Chelsea. So I'll be interested to see how he kind of fares. I'm going to give him plenty of time to kind of adapt because, I mean, we're not even at the transfer window being closed yet. So there's a lot of time to figure out kind of how this team is going to come together. But yeah, I'm excited for him. And I think he can, I really hope that he finds a home on that left wing for us.
Yeah. Interesting he got the 7 shirt as well, because that's the shirt he wore for Wolves.
A lot of interesting things happening.
Yeah, and obviously his idol's Cristiano, and he's always wanted that 7 shirt for that reason as well. So that kind of, for me, when you give someone a 7 shirt, sort of solidifies the idea that You know, so going to be a player that's not just going to be a bench option.
I think so. I think he's going to play frequently, and look, he hasn't really broke through that 30 game mark in a season for a little while. So, you know, with the amount of games that Chelsea could play this season, like we really need him to hit 40, 45, that sort of game mark to kind of maximize his talent. So just like anything else, part of this is up to him. And if he could stay fit, and part of it's up to the medical staff to make sure that he's not, you know, as we say in our club, in the red zone all the time for, you know, on the precipice of potentially being injured. So, you know, my hope is that it's clear sailing for him, that some of the injuries are behind him, and that he does really pick it up and is productive, because, you know, in doing some analysis of his play, he could really be a great provider for other players in our team. And
he got top assists for us, and
Yep.
he was injured for like three or 4 weeks, and he's still on like top assist in the Premier League. Like, just shows how well he did at the start. Well, probably the middle point of the season, he just absolutely came alive, and it was great to see. So yeah, we've got to that point. So what are your score predictions, Nick? What kind of score prediction can you muster up for us?
I have 1-1 draw written all over this one. I don't see a winner out of it, and you know, I think it's going to be a tricky game for both teams to play. So 1-1 draw, pretty safe, not going out on a limb too much.
That's fair enough. Cool. All right, nice one, Nick. Hopefully we catch you on the other side when we come to Stamford Bridge. But until then, mate, thanks very much, and hopefully have you on the next one. See
Looking forward to it.